Yes, parent obesity does affect child obesity. The statistics are that if one parent is obese, 40% of their children will be obese. And if two parents are obese, 80% of the children will be obese. So there is not only the genetic predisposition from the parent, but also the environment in the home in which the child's growing up that affects the influence on obesity.
This summer I worked with kids and taught them nutrition for my research. And I found that a lot of kids, like even as they're older, like 10, 11, 12-year-old, like, you know, older children, they still, like, their parents are the ones that are buying the food for them. And so even though the kids may say, like, oh, Mom, I want this, you know, or whatever in the grocery store, like, the parents are still the ones that are purchasing the food and making the choices to buy that food. And so I think the parents have a huge role to play in the choices. And so I'm not exactly sure what age the kids actually choose, but if the parents are allowing them and enabling them to choose the foods and letting them eat those foods and packing it in the lunches, and I feel like they're held responsible for the choices a lot of the time.
Obesity has tripled since 1980 in the United States in children. Here in our county, 43% of the children are obese. I believe that if we teach parents about healthy nutrition, healthy planning of meals and snacks, as well as the increase in physical activity honestly has a lot to do with it. So if a child is well nourished, that's great, but if they're not physically active, then they're not going to burn the calories. And it's as simple as that. Calories in have to equal calories out. So the parents need to get up and get moving as well as the children. So we've got to reverse our cycle of dependence on computers and television and games that just require our children to sit, and we've got to get them outside and moving. Some large cities have started programs where they'll even bring in physical activity equipment to parks and get children out moving. They look at sidewalks and the availability of sidewalks so children can ride their bikes and walk to school, safety of communities and environments. It's bigger than just the family almost. It's a community issue that has to be solved.
I think exercise plays a huge role in just getting kids motivated to do things, and it teaches them a lot about self-esteem and self-confidence and putting themselves out there. But it also is just good to burn calories and to build muscles. And I feel like obviously, I'm sure everybody knows that as electronics have gotten bigger, you know, and social media and video games and everything else, that kids are being less active.
My parents would hire a PlayStation machine on Fridays for us, but that was the only gaming thing I experienced, and we mainly went to family had a river house and would pretty much be on sand dunes and boats and fish and stuff. So
school actually, both of our schools required us to play a sport both summer and winter terms, so we didn't really have a choice in the matter for that. So we always were involved in the sports.
But we were always really balanced. Our parents made sure to keep us balanced. He would play PlayStation as his relaxation and I would watch TV as my relaxation, but we were always involved in a sport as well.
I think balance is a key word. So we've got to balance what we're feeding them. I'm a big proponent of my plate, which is a balance of carbs and fats and healthy proteins and low-fat dairy. Should we eliminate sugar? No. What happens when we omit sugar is that a child will find sugar, and I've seen that in my almost 30 years of practice, that parent who doesn't give their child any sugar is going to have a child who, when they're at a friend's home or out with friends, they're going to load up on sugar. So it's really a negative thing to just totally omit sugar from the diet. I think we've got to supply that child with plenty of fruits and vegetables and lean meats and low dairy and whole grains, and then an occasional sweet. Sure, there's nothing wrong with that. So it's got to be a balance. And again, if we add that element of physical activity to it, the child will be healthy and hopefully will lose weight too.
I'm not going to deprive them of sweets because it's just they need kind of a whole experience, because I feel like if you kind of deprive them when they have it for the first time, then they just kind of go overboard. So I feel like when you introduce it in moderation, everything is good.
Well, I think the main thing with children and nutrition is just making sure that they have a well-balanced diet. a lot of times it's really heavy in sugar and carbs, and so just to add a lot of fruits and vegetables and even dairy into their diet is really important because that doesn't seem to be a lot of what they eat. So.
I think one of the challenging things with feeding kids is to feed them the candy that they want just to calm them down, or to feed them the fruit juices, which tend to be really high in sugar and really high in calories, when you'd be better off feeding them the fruit instead of the fruit juice. Also, feeding them not a lot of vegetables, even if they say they don't like them, maybe they've just never tried them before, and maybe you can try cooking them in creative ways. So like Hannah said, increasing fruits and vegetables is a really big part of balancing their diet.
Healthy as I can. The cafeteria sometimes makes it harder than others, but overall I try to. It's harder. It's actually, when your parents are feeding you, it's easier for them to be convinced and to convince you to eat healthy. Now it's all up to you and what you have offered to you, basically.
I think, like Sarah said, a lot of times parents will give the kids however much they want, and so if it's going to be a good food they enjoy, they're going to want a lot of it, like pizza or French fries. And so, until they think, oh, my kid eats well, so just feed them more. But sometimes they need to be have one serving size of French fries and then a serving size of carrots, or try to make it a little bit smaller portions.
And they say that a good gauge for a serving size of meat is about the size of your fist, or like a deck of cards. So you can keep that in mind when you're serving up portion sizes. I think that society plays a big role in poisoning adolescents' minds and telling them that they're not worthy and not beautiful enough, and that causes them to take things kind of into their own hands and say, okay, well, if that's what it takes to be beautiful, then not eating is going to be what makes me look like that. And so,
I guess kind of tying the two together, childhood nutrition with eating disorders, I think it's really difficult for parents these days to balance